Hello and welcome to this edition of Finance and Technology Insights. I'm Brian Williams.
And I'm Eric Bjorndorf, CEO of Evernet Consulting. How's it going, Brian?
It's going pretty well. Had a bit of a longer weekend, I guess. I don't know what your week schedule was. I mean, this was a stock market holiday yesterday and a mail holiday, but we kind of did a mix here. It's a newer holiday, but it takes a little bit of getting used to, right?
Yeah. We Sunday was Father's Day, right?
Sunday was Father's Day, and then yesterday was Juneteenth. So
right.
I don't know what year that became a federal holiday. So only in the last 3 or 4 years, right?
No, wasn't it? It was long ago.
Was it?
Juneteenth.
I know it's obviously been around a while, but anyway. So I did have a couple meetings yesterday, but we took some time in the morning to go see a family member who just moved back to the area. So we helped them set up their house a little bit. So that worked out well in the morning.
Oh, nice.
How was your Father's Day?
Sorry, you got me on the Juneteenth thing. 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation was issued in 1863. So the date commemorates the fall of slavery in Galveston, Texas, 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation in 63. Huh. Sorry. I like history.
No, I think that's interesting. I mean, I know the holiday goes all the way back. 2021 was the first year it was a federal holiday.
There it is. In 2021, when the holiday gained federal recognition, just 37% of adult Americans said they knew what it was. All right, well, bring it up.
21, 22, 23. So
that's what holidays are good for. Not to reduce Juneteenth, the day before that was Father's Day. Mm-hmm. And the girls completely showered me in love and affection and adoration, and it was wonderful. My dad, he lives with us. He was able to participate. He got some gifts and some love. We went to, it was kind of like a lazy but together day. We went to, I'm just starting to get back into golfing, or at least that's my plan. So I have ancient golf clubs, like like really embarrassing equipment, but they're solid enough. They're just none of this fancy Nike and whatever their kids are doing these days with their golf clubs. So I sent them to Dick's Sporting Goods in Canton to get regripped. So I got all my clubs regripped. So there's in that plaza there's kind of like a outdoor mall walking area. They call it the shops on the Canton Green or something like that. So they didn't, all the stores there didn't really open until 11, and we got there around 10. So we ended up kind of walking around and spending time together. And then after we got that, we didn't really get done. We took the girls to the bookstore because I like to take them to get books every weekend if we can. And then some lunch, some ice cream, stuff like that. So yeah, it's pretty casual. What Luke do to spoil you?
Yeah, we had a pretty busy and low key, I guess, at the same time. Saturday we had my niece's 10th birthday party, so that was in Pelham, New York, so a couple hours away, but we got to get some good cousin time in there. That was pretty good. And then on Sunday we had one of my longtime friends, his daughter graduated high school, so we went to her high school graduation party on Sunday. And
my cousin's daughter, that's what we did on Saturday. My cousin's daughter, eldest daughter, had her graduation party on Saturday, and so that's what we did on Saturday. Yeah, I don't know why Monday comes and it just erases what I did the 2 days prior, but
and yesterday was so strange because it was because it is a newer holiday, and it kind of splits the difference. Kind of threw everybody off a little bit. That combined with like the end of school. So Lauren's last day as a teacher was Thursday. And your kids done now?
Yeah, they were done on Friday. Mm-hmm. That's right.
Yeah. So you got all that going on. And then some schools. So my sister is a teacher, and they go, I think, until this Thursday. She's in New York, but having that Juneteenth in there is kind of a longer weekend kind of knocks them off balance a little bit, but they're getting used to it. So
yeah, it's strange how the districts and the states are different. My sister, who's in Florida, I think has been done since May, but they also
yeah,
go back in August, I think.
right. Yeah, they do go back a little bit earlier, but yeah, no, in Connecticut, that actually made it an initiative. So the districts used to decide their calendar. Now they've consolidated a little bit, so it's the counties that decide their district calendar. So so that helps out a little bit because you had, not parents usually work in a different district than their kids might go to school. So there was some coordination issues there. So that actually doesn't help us much because we're in Southington and my wife teaches in Cheshire, and they're actually two different counties because we're Hartford and they're New Haven County. But
Oh, right.
for each other, we're on the line. But I think that did help consolidate things a little bit. So
When do you guys have any plans for the lake house or anything special this summer?
Yeah, nothing crazy as far as vacations. We're going to spend some time in Florida where my mother-in-law is. I believe we're leaning towards taking the train and
All the
doing
way to
the
Florida?
overnight. Yeah, doing overnight the sleeper car thing. So we're
Oh,
kind of into that. And then
that'll be
because
fun.
once we get there, obviously my mother-in-law has her car, which we can use, but but she's in the Villages, which is primarily golf cart friendly. So most places we go, we can do the golf cart as far as, going out to eat and stuff. So having our car there isn't a really big necessity. So we just have to decide if we want to take the train back or fly back, or could, I guess, even rent a car and drive back if we wanted. So so that's still kind of up in the air, but yeah, last year we did the Alaskan cruise, and this year we're not doing anything of that scale, I don't believe. So so we'll see.
Talk about golf carts. I wish Connecticut would slow down and be more friendly to golf carts. We living in West Hartford, like this would be such a fun community to turn into a golf cart community. And
I know it would be. And the way I mean, especially down at the Villages, you're not supposed to soup them up and stuff, but some people actually do. I mean, they move along pretty good. And for a planned community like the Villages, where there's so many, they have their own lane and they have their own underpasses and overpasses and everything. So, you're moving along at 15, 20 miles an hour, but if you're not dealing with stop signs and lights and all that kind of stuff, it's actually pretty time wise, it's pretty efficient, because even if you're driving, maybe you're driving a lot of those local streets at 30 or 35, but it's a little bit easier on the golf cart. So
yeah, especially if you get an electric golf cart, you can kind of wave the green flag on that one, and just have that kind of low and slow and green. Like we have a Stop and Shop like right around the corner from our house, and fire up my V8 Pathfinder SUV. Thing doesn't even get warm by the time we get over there.
Yeah, I know, right? So Connecticut's got this the CyberHub Initiative, and they're rolling out something last week. I don't know if that's something you want to touch on a little bit, but so in Stamford, they're going to be doing a launch of the Connecticut CyberHub Initiative. So this is Governor Lamont's, in his own words, the groundbreaking C-Hub, as he's called it. So that's going to go on next week. I think you're planning to attend. It might be something I attend as well, but the goal is to modernize the workforce economy and all that kind of stuff. So the mayor's going to speak. We're going to have Tim Wentworth, the former CEO of Event Scripts, Jeff Brown, who is a CISO perspective. He's going to bring that perspective, Chief Information Security Officer, and Justin Orcutt from the Aerospace Commercial Defense Security of Microsoft. So all that's going to be happening a week from today on June 27th at 1:00. It says it's going to be a historic event. So what are your thoughts on this initiative and this event?
Do you want let me see if I can stop sharing here. Yeah, so I'm a member of a number of associations, which I thought I had in front of me, and I'm catching me a little flat-footed here. I got June teeth.
Yeah, you can talk. I'll pull it up. I have a here.
So I'm a member of a number of trade associations. There's ISACA, ISC Squared. These are all associations that IT and cybersecurity professionals are members of. And I got an email sent to me last week or this week that this C-Hub or CyberHub was being launched. To be honest with you, on the surface of it, I just made some assumptions as to what it is, but it looks like it basically, and I don't know what, maybe tell me if you think I'm wrong, but it looks like Connecticut's an effort from Connecticut to try to denote itself as a cyber hub of talent.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Certainly to attract businesses and all that sort of stuff.
But where's the rubber hitting the road here? Like, this is with these things, like what?
I don't know. I guess that's what we're going to find out.
Yeah. So this is a meeting down in Stamford next Tuesday to open the CyberHub, the Connecticut CyberHub Initiative. I do have an article up from the DAS that describes it. Let me see if I can share this quickly here. You have that?
Yep.
So this is on the DAS, Connecticut DAS blog back in July of 22. This is an article from the gentleman Doug Casey describing, let's see, as you are probably aware, DAS and other state agencies have intentional efforts underway to streamline and digitize services for the residents we serve. And as these resources move online, combating cybersecurity threats remains a top priority. To do so requires a talented army of cyber experts working across agencies, private organizations, and local towns to set up and manage the vast array of technology tools and practices needed to train and protect Connecticut residents. Indeed, the 2022 Connecticut State Cybersecurity Strategy calls attention to the cyber skills shortage and for partnering with educational institutions to support training and educational programs. Okay, so that's the declaration. To that end, the BITS team in the DAS has created the Connecticut CyberHub. The CyberHub has received Governor Lamont's endorsement and stems from a broader initiative through the National Governors Association, run in partnership with both the IQ4 Corporation, which looks like a private organization, which I have open here, which I'll have to do a deeper dive. I wish I was a little more prepared. The mission of the Connecticut Hybrid and Engaged Public Sectors, educational institutions to create. Okay, here we go. So here's the mission statement: to create, accelerate, and scale the next gen of cybersecurity workforce talent. Build an accelerator for increasing cybersecurity education, leverage IQ4 state-of-the-art technology platforms that enable student, mentor, faculty learning and innovation at scale. So you have this private company that's obviously partnering with the state for some benefit of this company, IQ4. Implement the IQ4 learning and employment record system infrastructure, resulting in a skills-based community of talent where learners can translate their resume to skills, career pathways, and jobs, and also enable employers to discover, develop, and retain great talent, provide an incubator to support the launch of cybersecurity startup companies. What do you get from that?
Well, I get that there's not a whole lot going on here. I think it's one of these initiatives where it's trying to, obviously get colleges involved. We do have some pretty good universities here in the state, obviously. So I think it's trying to attract, it says attract diversity. I mean, now that's going to be included in any sort of new program. But I think they want to be an innovation hub, and maybe they see an opportunity here as, maybe they want to be the Silicon Valley East or something of the cybersecurity world. So they're seeing a lane and trying to run in that and get some government support behind it. I guess we'll find out more on Tuesday.
To me, it looks like this company IQ4. You ready for the pessimist in me?
Yeah, let's do it.
This is a private company, IQ4, that's clearly found some cronyism in the state to adopt whatever platform they sell, which is this digital talent cloud platform and cybersecurity workforce alliance division. Focuses on the discovery, development, and retention of technology talent. It builds a talent pipeline for employers in Connecticut at a fraction of the time, resulting in tremendous cost savings. Corporations save hiring time and cost. CyberHub takes 1/5 the time for a student to gain skills and 1/10 the time cost to hire and onboard a student. Based on market analysis, the average cost savings. So IQ4 is selling some online cloud education platform or something.
Yeah, I don't see them listed as a presenter or anything next week, so I don't know if they're still in the mix there, but
Run in partnership with both the IQ4 Corporation and SDG. I don't know who SDG is with support. So I don't know. I don't mean to be a dark cloud, but I mean, on the surface of it, like if anything the state's doing to run a cyber initiative is good, this seems to be a showcase for this IQ4 online learning system or something. I don't know if the state's going to leverage that exclusively to train its personnel or students, or if it's going to bolt that on to the likes of like UConn or something.
right.
So I don't know. I'm kind of like, you know, as a cybersecurity professional, I'm any awareness and any you know, any awareness to our trade and the importance of, you know, staff, you know, building a strong talent pool of cybersecurity professionals is a good thing, right?
Yeah.
And the
Absolutely.
pessimist in me that says like a public-private partnership with a single corporation looks like a little bit of cronyism. I can't help it.
Well, that's what you'll find out next week. We'll have to report back on that, or a couple weeks actually.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, any of these sort of things. I mean, I have a little bit of a skepticism due to their foray into financial services with their IRA mandate. So even though it's a little bit different, we've seen how good intentions can go awry sometimes. Let's talk about cybersecurity in general, because I was listening to a podcast this morning. Not going to mention it, partially because I don't remember which one it was. You load up a bunch of the queue. But they were talking more about some initiatives to really put the onus on cybersecurity. The phrase they used was to put the onus on those who can bear it, type of thing. So I was thinking about smaller businesses and like myself. I mean, I don't store a lot of data. I'm not running my own databases. I'm using, you know, primarily the tools that probably 90% of folks are using, like Microsoft products and that type of stuff. So from a cyber threat standpoint, where do you see small businesses really having that? And do you feel like it really should be, you know, their responsibility? Because, you know, at what level is, you know, a solopreneur like me, am I reaching out to my CRM and saying, hey, what are you guys doing on, you know, cybersecurity? And, you know, most small businesses may not be equipped to deal with the answer anyway. So where do you fall in terms of the responsibility and what small businesses should be doing there?
That's a really great question and something I could speak to in length. You know, cybersecurity, well, regulations in general, there's this watermark or measure where you want to have regulations to incentivize behavior, but there is a threshold where no amount of regulation can fully change behavior. You know, you can't, regulation doesn't get rid of drugs. Regulation doesn't get rid of speeding on roadways. Regulation doesn't get rid of, you know, violence and abuses. You know what I mean? So then why have, you know, so, you know, and it gets philosophical, you know, why have regulations and what value are there and that sort of thing. So it's really, you know, from a cybersecurity regulatory landscape, regulators, you know, with GDPR is like the biggest headline regulation that's come out in recent past. Regulators really have to be careful in sitting on high and issuing these directives and regulations that are going to plainly put a burden on industry. And there's a threshold where the regulation has to concern itself with, at what point do we make law-abiding citizens or corporations or businesses, criminal or non-compliant. You know what I mean? So that's always the scare. And the reality is, small business is incredibly cost sensitive. And when you add a regulation, you are adding cost. And most people that don't own or operate a business don't really understand or are not sensitive to that. But I assure you, the price of every product that you buy off store shelves, it contains the cost of regulatory compliance, whether it's in a food product that has various FDA checks and balances and compliance, or if it's a cybersecurity product, or if it's a professional services product, whether it's accounting, you're buying accounting services or legal services, although the legal industry is largely unregulated. Surprise, surprise. They're just governed by their own rules of ethics. So I don't know, I'm kind of speaking high right now on this. So it's, but then on the other hand, you're going to see a small medical practice or optometrist for some healthcare services, and you want to make sure that your Social Security number and your health records aren't just in the wind, right?
Right.
So what's the right thing to do? What is the right thing to do? I could tell you that no amount of regulation is going to fix the problem.
Right.
I tend to believe that free markets and economics bring the best solution to these problems. The small business, the small primary care physician, or the solo primary care physician who has 2 receptionists or medical aides and a 2-lane office that's maybe it's a pediatrician or something. That was what I grew up going to see. My pediatrician was in a small little house. The High Tech Act, which is a rider to HIPAA, spoke heavily on kind of pushing medical practices to implementing technology and implementing electronic medical records, right? But then HIPAA also, and it also instituted at the same time, I think, more fines and more definitions of fines if you're not HIPAA compliant. You know what I mean? So it's like it's pushing people to pushing these small businesses to use technology, but also defining fines if there's breach in trust and the data. So what's a small business to do? I mean, more regulation, I don't think is helpful. I think there's a financial incentive for every business to not violate the trust of its customers, and I tend to rely on that. I tend to believe that every single business has a fiscal imperative, what is a term I always use, to not act negligently, and not mishandle the data. The legal industry, for example, they have, while they're not regulated, their rules of practice, I think they call it, there's a clause in there that says it's their ethical responsibility to not be ignorant,
right?
To have the initiation, to be initiated in all areas of their practice. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I'll tag you in on that. What do you have to say about all that?
Certainly, same thing in our profession too. If I were to take the other side of that, if there even is one, I would say there could potentially, there's an economic interest in, obviously doing the right thing, but there could be a situation where there's an economic interest in not doing the right thing. You've got an accountant or an advisor or somebody who gets a laptop stolen out of their car or something. I mean, obviously, maybe there's a way to get some information off of that or whatever. They could choose to report that. They could also choose to not report that. So there could be a disincentive there to do the right thing. But no, I would agree that obviously you want people to do the right thing, and there's an advantage to that. And if it's ever traced back that somebody should have done something where they I should have done something and they didn't, that could potentially be a problem too. From a like a competitive standpoint, I don't know if that's probably not something the end client is really looking for. I mean, certainly in our business, working with, custodians like Schwab or TD or record keeper providers like Empower or Fidelity, it's my job as an advisor to kind of, keep an eye on them and make sure they're doing the right thing. But in reality, what's my role? What am I going to do with Schwab if I feel they've got some sort of gap in their cybersecurity thing? Am I equipped to even find that? Probably not.
I see. I remember on LinkedIn 6 months ago, I'm putting on major banking institutions, putting them on blast for like obvious cybersecurity bad practice.
Yeah. And there are definitely some oddball scenarios where there's certain things from not necessarily, well, yeah, I guess it's cybersecurity, but certain things where you've been able to fix some sort of issue that they've had with an account or something, and they'll just kind of take a verbal from the advisor, which is great. It's efficient. It gets it done. And then you're thinking just like, geez, is that really the right way to do it? And then there's other instances where you got to jump through excessive hoops to get something accomplished or get something changed. And you're like, boy, that's not in balance. The response to the issue there is not, but the way that stuff works, it's because obviously they've had some sort of issue there or some sort of breach or something. So they overcorrect there, and then they're not going to be proactive and make things more difficult for the advisor or the client if they haven't had an issue yet, and they'll wait till something happens and fix it. But I think it's interesting I think the idea from a small business owner standpoint is you have to do something, you have to document it, and at a minimum punch a little bit above your weight or go a little above and beyond what you feel your capabilities are. If I'm taking a day once a year to review Schwab or review one of the 401k providers, at least it looks like I'm doing something, and maybe I do uncover something, and maybe I come across some information where I can add some value, or if a client asks me, hey, what's, Schwab's cybersecurity policy or something, I can speak to it. And that's certainly, even though it might not produce a huge outcome, I think that's something that demonstrates you're at least doing something and going up and above what some check the box item might be.
Let me speak to that demonstrating actions and abilities. So again, I tend to like the economic imperative of keeping things honest and functional. But one thing that I do promote and support are standards. And not only standards, but representation of compliance to a standard. So there's a number of cybersecurity frameworks and standards, and there's so like the United States government has NIST, and the National Institute of Standards and Technology. NIST issues various cybersecurity frameworks. In fact, they have the NIST cybersecurity framework. Okay, but that's a framework that defines various controls and activities surrounding information security, but it's not a standard and it's not a regulation. So therefore, it's not a standard. So you can't have an accredited body. There's not a framework surrounding the NIST cybersecurity framework that you can get certified on. You can attest to say that we follow the NIST cybersecurity framework, right? But there's no third party accreditation infrastructure that can come in and audit and then attest that you are compliant. Conversely, there is the ISO 27001 standard, which is a standard which does have an accreditation framework that you can have a third party accredited body and auditor come in and attest that you are compliant and certified in that. Similarly, HIPAA, for example, HIPAA is a regulation, but it's not a framework, nor is it a standard. So there's, to be HIPAA compliant, there's technically no accreditation body or certification or gold seal that you can get for your healthcare practice that says we are HIPAA compliant, and you can attest to that. So I tend to like the model of like the ISO 27001, a standard that has a framework for accreditation, so that whether it's, there's going to be an introduction of flaws in that whole model anyways, but at least it's some basis of saying, here's a published standard, here's a third-party infrastructure where people can work to become accredited. They can be auditors, and then they can attest to the compliance or the level of compliance of this standard. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, that definitely does. And that's ultimately what you want as a small business owner, to have somebody come down and say, all right, these are our expectations, but without really any standards to go by, and kind of a step-by-step process, or be able to build your own policies and check the box and say, okay, yes, I did that.
Well, the benefit is to a small business, if it weren't a regulation like HIPAA, if the regulation environment was lighter, if we lean towards my method, my preferred methodology, which is less regulation and let the economics work it out. If you had the standards body build the standards, then consumers could say, well, I get my IT services or my financial advice from a small business that is accredited, or not accredited, but is compliant, certified, I guess is the term, right? Is certified this standard, right?
Sure.
And then the businesses can go like, well, we can't afford the cost of compliance or standardization or certification. We can't afford the cost of certification, because let's face it, the consumer the consumer that may be shopping from there's let's face it, there's levels of consumers that can afford various levels of services, right? I mean, and that's just what the economy does. And then the competing school of thought is like, well, why should sensitive economic people lower, how do I want to say this? Help me out here. Lower.
Yeah. Should lower income people be exposed to more risk?
Right.
No.
Right. And I'm sensitive to that, but then that's where government subsidies come in. And, that's where the playing field.
Or a baseline standard, which, isn't zero, right? It's a non-zero thing. The baseline that you hope would.
Right. So if you had a standard that that businesses wanted to get certified in, so that they can represent to their potential market that, hey, we're meeting these standards, instead of having a regulation that just like is the threat of the axe all the time, and the fines, you could take monies and dollars to say like, okay, well, if you show whatever, how the government always, if you can show a financial need, then we can give you a subsidy to try to get that certification. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I don't know if I organized my thoughts on the fly well there, but
no, I think that's good. And we'll find out next week what this Connecticut issue is all about, and what sort of steps they're taking to make Connecticut a leader here, and we'll report back.
Yeah, the plan is, at least right now, to get down to Stamford, Connecticut next Tuesday to see the launch of the Connecticut CyberHub Initiative.
Yep. Yeah. And part of it too, part of your maybe not for you, but part of compliance things for me is that you do attend some of these cybersecurity functions. That's part of your documentation process. And like with a lot of these conferences or webinars, you might be there 2 or 3 hours, and there might be 5 good minutes that are new, or there might be 10 good minutes that give you some takeaways or something. But I know Schwab and some of the other 401k record keeper providers put out certain cybersecurity bulletins and things to be aware of, and so it's good to attend these type of things from third parties, but then also with the vendors that you work with.
So an educated consumer of mine would ask me, what associations are you a member of? And the associations, I'm a member of all the leading associations in my trade: ISACA, ISC Squared, and continuing education is a requisite of the membership.
Yeah, no, that's good. Absolutely. All right, so switch gears to another topic here. I was going to talk a little bit about some of the action in the Bitcoin world. I think it's interesting because, it seems to be one of these things that from a finance and technology standpoint, it intersects with what we do and on the podcast, but it also just seems to keep popping up, right? There's always sort of new developments and new things going on there. So one of the big developments over the last week or so was Blackrock, which is one of the largest ETF providers, exchange traded fund providers, filed for a Bitcoin ETF. Now, there's been other companies that have filed for Bitcoin ETFs and been rejected. One of those companies was Greyscal, and they have a product now, which is a closed-end fund. Mutual funds and ETFs are considered open-end funds, and I'll maybe get into that if we want to nerd out a little bit. But so Greyscale's application was to convert their closed-end fund into an open-ended fund like an ETF, and now BlackRock has gone in the mix to file for their own. So BlackRock is a company that typically wouldn't go down this route if they thought they were going to be rejected. That's they're not the company that's just throws a bunch of stuff at the wall and see what sticks. So the idea is that since they've gone through the effort to make this filing, which is all these filings are public, so these things get picked up by news sources. And because they are such a large provider of ETFs, it's like, okay, they must have a pretty good idea internally that this thing is going to pass. And when the SEC rejects these filings, they'll typically do a fairly decent job of talking about why they didn't approve these filings. So BlackRock must have picked up on this and had their attorneys go to work and make sure their filing is pretty airtight. So we'll see what happens there. The other big news is there's just a lot of talk around Fidelity. Fidelity is, for the most part, a fairly conservative company, I think, as far as getting into new products and new concepts. And they were actually one of the early adopters as far as potentially making Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies available through 401k plans. So, but there's been some talk that who knows, maybe they even might buy a company like Greyscale, or they may do something internally to make this be a little bit easier to be adopted by the masses. Certainly an ETF would make it very easily, that's the easiest vehicle to purchase some of these things. So rather than going on some sort of exchange that might be an issue, or having some sort of wallet or any of that sort of crazy stuff, you're simply putting in a ticker symbol, same as you would buy Microsoft or Apple, and you're just buying this basket of securities, which initially that basket of securities would just be Bitcoin, or they could potentially, add in other cryptocurrencies there. But there's been a lot of movement there in the last week or so, and that's following a week of some crackdown of some of these alternative exchanges and stuff like that. So it's pretty clear.
What would you define an alternative exchange like?
Well, some things like Coinbase and if you even want to go back to FTX and all that sort of stuff, that was a different issue, but sort of bringing this stuff a little bit more mainstream, and as it becomes a little bit more regulated and accessible to folks, you might see a little bit more adoption there. So there's been a little bit of movement on that. I don't know if you followed that over the last week or so, but that's been kind of a hot topic.
My news feed has been relatively quiet in the crypto. I know I saw a headline that says Binance I know Binance and FTX are two that are in the hot seat lately, and
yep.
I saw some headlines that said Binance can continue operating despite its legal woes or something. Other than that, I haven't seen much out of crypto.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about that last week. I'll pull up a quick chart here. This is from a company called Y Charts. And this is kind of interesting because I did a video on this a while back, but this is a 5-year chart of the Greyscale Bitcoin Trust. So what a closed-end fund is and how it's different than an open-ended fund like an ETF is a closed-end fund issues a set amount of shares, and then that's it. And there could be a basket of securities that trade potentially at a premium, which seems kind of weird to people sometimes, and then also at a discount, which can be equally weird sometimes. But let's say you have a basket of securities worth $10. If the market really wants to get that basket of securities, they may be willing to pay $11 for it, even though it's only worth $10, just because they need access to it. So that's what's called being traded at a premium. Most closed-end funds will trade at a discount. So they're buying those basket of $10 worth of securities for $9. And for a long time, GBTC, their Grayscale Bitcoin Trust, traded at a premium because it was one of the easier ways to access Bitcoin. So over here isn't a price chart. This is the discount or premium. So when it's above this line, it's trading at a premium. So if we just stop here at a data point of December 18th, 2020, it's trading at a 35% premium, meaning which people are willing to pay, $13.50 for $10 worth of Bitcoin. And they're doing that because they're gaining access to it. And then from there, it's really kind of dropped to a discount where people are able to gain, almost a 50% discount. You're paying $5 for a basket of $10 worth of Bitcoin. And there's been some issues of, some talk about why it trades at a discount and all that kind of stuff. But if you go back and just look at the last month, this discount has started to close quite a bit, because the idea is maybe if this is able to convert to an ETF, it'll convert at, it won't be a premium or a discount. It'll trade at net asset value. So in theory, people are thinking, wow, I can buy this at a 30%, 36% discount today. And that if it ever converts, it's going to convert at zero. So I'm buying a basket of $10 worth of securities for $6.40. And overnight, in theory, that $6 would be worth $10. So this is all on the back of Blackrock filing for their ETF, and then some talk about, Fidelity getting into the business, and potentially some rumors about them buying Greyscale or something like that. So that's just it would be kind of interesting for the listeners to kind of get the idea of the difference between an open-ended fund and closed-end fund. So ETFs, they can a little bit trade for discounts or premiums, but you won't see this type of movement. So anyway, that's going on in the world of Bitcoin. So you get this idea that it becomes more mainstream and becomes a little bit more regulated, and then you say, well, that's kind of the opposite of what it was designed to do. So I think everybody's trying to figure out what that balance is to kind of let this free range a little bit, but as soon as it becomes mainstream and highly regulated, then it's like, well, that kind of defeats the whole purpose of the rebel feature of Bitcoins and cryptos to begin with.
Right. But I mean, Bitcoin's future is definitely with its legitimacy from the perspective of the United States government, right?
Yep. Yeah. And they, they'll do it under, if you get into this, the idea of, they're doing it for consumer protection, and, people lost a lot of money through FTX, and then the counterbalance of that as well, they're trying to squash this thing down because it's a competitor for the US dollar. And
right. Conceivably, the United States government puts a warrant on the heads of leaders, traders, and maybe even, there's precedent for even owning or possessing the coin or currency to be illegal, right?
Yeah, we've had if you go back to having gold confiscated in the 30s, you could go to that extreme, or you could go to governments like China who've outlawed the mining and stuff like that. I don't think we'll go to that sort of extreme, but they could, in essence, regulate it or kind of tax it out of existence, I guess, if they wanted to.
If it's an untrackable currency, I don't know why I'm coming out of left field with this, but I'm thinking about my own procurement of, I'm not investing in crypto presently. Maybe I should be, because it's when it's quiet. But there's a thought of thinking like, well, if the United States government goes fully nuclear on crypto, would that be an impetus for its crash, or would that be a boon for it?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think that sort of ties into the idea that if the US government overregulates it, is it just going to hurt the US because these companies will just take up shop somewhere else. They may move to London or, in the Caribbean or something, and they may do something. And so then you've sort of taken this, something that was semi above ground, and maybe pushing it to a little bit more underground, and maybe in your attempt to regulate it, you've made it less regulated.
Crypto got its start and its utility in the black market and the the gray area, right? And then the investors and individuals are starting to try to benefit from it. I don't know if besides Elon Musk taking Dogecoin for Tesla merch on their website, I don't know. Have you seen any legitimate uses for crypto for a consumer?
Not yet. I mean, there was a few of those ATMs that popped up. I don't know if you've seen those, which are kind of weird. But no, functionally, it hasn't really caught on. It's caught on as an investment, and where people still kind of talk about it. And
I know that some third world. I saw CNBC, I think, did a spot where I don't know, forgive me the country, but whether it's Pakistan or somewhere in the Midwest, Mideast, that crypto was being used to expedite the sending of money to family members abroad. And it was only because the bureaucracy to get actual currency abroad was just too slow or too expensive.
Right. And El Salvador was the first country that adopted it as legal tender in September 2021. So
how's that going for them?
I haven't checked in on it in a while. I know it obviously had some rough patches. I think initially it was met with some people were excited about it, but it just, the fluctuation of it made it difficult to really, you get your paycheck in crypto, and then over the weekend it drops by 20%. So I think the volatility needs to be smoothed out a little bit, but we'll see.
Interesting. Yeah. All right, what else do we have on the docket? I got a hard stop in, I don't know, 20 minutes or so.
Yeah, is there anything else in finance or technology that was gnawing at you? We talked about the Reddit stuff a little bit last week. That still seems to be in the news. A lot of the moderators just haven't come back, because I think when we talked about it last week live, the idea was some of the apps and stuff were concerned with the high cost of accessing the API.
Right.
Now it's shifted a little bit to some of the moderators, or the people who are on there a lot, are saying, all right, well, Reddit's increased the cost of their API with the idea that they're going to make all this money, but Reddit's nothing without the users and the moderators of these of these threads. So a lot of the moderators have either turned their sites dark, or they're no longer moderating. So I think this is an interesting story to keep following.
Yeah, I admit, not being a strong Reddit user myself, my interest is really low in it. But I do recognize to all the stay-at-home moms and whoever's on Reddit that it's a significant platform. So I don't know. I haven't had time lately to check what my echo chamber has been talking about it. So I would have to defer to you on what's currently.
Yeah, I'm not a big user there either, but I think it's interesting in that so many of these platforms, I mean, the platforms are nothing without the users, right? Obviously. I mean, Facebook doesn't create anything. YouTube doesn't create anything. Twitter doesn't create anything.
Right.
And to the extent that they're just profiting off content creators, who are not necessarily making anything in return, I think this is I'm going to see interesting business models pop up on this, because it's not only now Reddit that could potentially be profiting off the data of the users, but then if Reddit is then selling that to, large language models, and then they're profiting, you've got people who are like, well, listen, I've been writing on this platform for years. Reddit sold my data, and now OpenAI is making money off everything that I've put in here. So, so we'll see what this does to content.
We almost made it a whole show without saying AI.
Yeah, I know. That's pretty good that we've made it, 45 minutes, for almost 50 minutes. I was actually surprised when we were talking about the Connecticut cyber thing that didn't find its way in their AI somewhere into just, even if they just put it somewhere in the invitation just for some clicks or some
AI, just random AI. This was written by ChatGBT.
Yeah.
What else? Anything?
What about the phrase double click? Have you followed that at all?
Mm-mm.
I don't know. So that's been a big, a lot of podcasts and a lot of these, it's like to take a deeper dive into something. So when companies are doing their corporate earnings, these conference calls and stuff, you're hearing it pop up a little bit more. And then there were a couple things that came out last week about the use of that and how it's like skyrocketed. So
With the term double click.
yeah, people are using it, obviously, of not the function of actually double clicking on things, but in earning press releases and stuff, they're saying, well, if we double click on our marketing efforts and see how that's really, so it,
The new corporate speak. Are you?
yeah,
That's what that is?
that's been a big deal. Yeah,
That's
I
funny.
don't say it, and I still find it weird when people do, but I've
I
heard
have
that now on a
not,
bunch of
thankfully,
podcasts.
heard that corporate speak yet, but
Mhm.
I feel like I'm always late to the dance. So when these kids come out with new terms and new technology, they have to make it to Facebook before I start picking them up. I'm that old.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Well, that's a good place to stop it at, I think, unless you got anything else.
No, I'm out of gas. I got a lot happening at home and work, so I'm just glad we made it. And I apologize to our many viewers if I lacked the usual charm and wit and energy that I bring to the show.
I think they're good with it. I'm good with it. I think so next week next week is the day of the cyber thing, so we'll figure out what to do with a show there. Maybe we bump it to Wednesday.
Yeah,
And do a recap of that.
admittedly, I'm on the fence too. Like if I want to take the train down to Stanford. I think that would be fun. If you were up for it and we rode down together, that would be hilarious. If we spent the day doing that, we probably could get some content out of it and hopefully some learning and some experience from it. If that doesn't shape up, then we'll stick with our Tuesday recording. The other thing too is, I know our bandwidth is obviously going to be poor on the train, but I wonder, could we get away with somehow doing a show on the train? I'm not that clever, but
we could probably be okay with audio only. We could probably do that. I don't know the video aspect if that would come through, but
is it too much work to use our own respective phones? Or I have a couple GoPros. Like, if we did like two tripods, like on the floor pointing at each of us, and
the suction cup things that put them on the windows, we could do that.
But then that would
travel guys do it.
Require some post editing. I don't know if that would be worth it or not, but
yeah, I don't know. Something to think about. So we got a teaser then for next week.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. Stay tuned to see whether we live stream from a train, and maybe that's what we do. Does StreamYard have a mobile app? Is it mobile friendly?
I don't know, but we could make it work.
Yeah, we'll see.
Use browsers on our phone.
Anyway,
I'm Brian Williams from Northshire Consulting, Connecticut-based investment advisory firm working with small business and families on all their interesting financial and investment needs. I should throw out, probably for my compliance folks, that nothing we say on here is any sort of tax, legal, or investment advice. It's just for information and entertainment purposes.
I'm Eric Bjorndorf, CEO of Evernet Consulting. We're a national IT and managed service provider. We also launched a digital advertising agency where we can do your websites and paid advertising campaigns. Find us at evernetco.com. Schedule a discovery call with me using the discovery call button there. Follow us on social at evernetco on all of your favorite social networks. This is Finance and Technology Insights, where Brian and I record every Tuesday when able. We have a Facebook group and Facebook page and a YouTube channel. So depending on if you're listening to us, Brian does push this out on your favorite podcaster, but it's also a YouTube channel as well. So that's what we got. We'll see you next week, Brian.
See you next week.